Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're going to be taking a sledgehammer to what feels like one of the most sacred cows in all of startup culture.
Oh, this is a big one.
It is. It's this long-held idea, this sort of bedrock belief that the best product is always going to win. That if you just build it better, faster, stronger, you're set.
Right, the build a better mousetrap theory of the universe. And for decades, that was the ethos of Silicon Valley, wasn't it? The entire game was about engineering supremacy.
Completely. The whole mantra was build fast and break things.
Yeah, if you had the best code, the smartest engineers, the highest product velocity, you were on the path. The bottlenecks everyone talked about were always, capital or finding the right talent or just raw infrastructure costs.
But that whole model, it seems to have just collided head on with this new reality, what our sources are calling the age of AI.
And that's where this gets really disruptive.
It is, and we're diving into some incredibly powerful insights today from the veteran SaaS founder, Hiten Shah. And, this is someone who has been in the trenches building category-defining tools. We're talking about Crazy Egg, Kissmetrics, Niara.
He's seen it all. He's not an academic. He's a builder who has lived through multiple tech cycles. So when he says something's changed, you listen.
Exactly. And watching this hyper-accelerated market of, what he's seeing in late 2025, he's delivered this really stark, essential counter-argument to all the builders out there.
His core observation, and it's a big one, is that in this new environment, all those long-held rules of startup growth, they've been fundamentally inverted.
Inverted, that's the perfect word.
The primary bottleneck, the thing that is actually holding companies back, is no longer in the engineering pipeline. It's a constraint that lives entirely outside the code editor.
So our mission for this deep dive is crystal clear. We need to understand why, in this hyper-fast, AI-accelerated world, a world where code is practically democratized and you can spin up an MVP in a weekend, why Shah's diagnosis holds true.
And that diagnosis is...
Marketing is now the primary bottleneck.
Yeah.
Not the ability to build, not talent, not server capacity, but the ability to communicate, to articulate, and to connect with an audience. We have to figure out in exhaustive detail why the skill of communication now actively constrains the skill of creation.
It's a huge shift. And to really get our heads around it, we have to start by contextualizing this moment. The sources refer to it metaphorically, but it's very real. They call it the age of abundance.
Okay, let's unpack that. Age of abundance. What does that actually mean for a founder?
It means that the democratization of creation isn't some theoretical future. It's the operating condition of the market right now. This shift, and it's been driven almost entirely by advances in AI and tooling, has just fundamentally rewritten the economic calculus of building a company.
So let's define what that old landscape looked like, the product economy.
In the old product economy, value was rooted in scarcity. And the crucial question was, what was scarce?
Well, the ability to build complex software, right?
Exactly. The capability to build complex, reliable, enterprise-grade software. That was the rare commodity. You had a scarcity of high-level engineering talent, a scarcity of the capital you needed to hire that talent, and a scarcity of the time it took to iterate on all that complex infrastructure. You look back even 10, maybe 15 years ago, just achieving a stable, functional, polished application was a massive differentiator in and of itself. A huge one. If you could build an enterprise-grade product, you are already winning. Why? Because 99% of your potential competitors simply couldn't get off the starting line. The product itself, its very existence and functionality, was the moat.
But Shah argues, and this is the crux of it, that the moment AI turns software creation from, and this is a quote, a gated engineering discipline into a near-democratized superpower, that critical scarcity it evaporated, seemingly overnight.
It vanished. If an LLM or an AI-powered copilot can generate all your boilerplate code, if it can handle the testing scaffolding, manage your deployment environments, what happens?
The baseline quality of technical execution just goes up across the entire board. Everyone gets better instantly.
Precisely. And the result is that the market is now flooded, and I don't think that's hyperbole, with technically functional products. This flood is what forces the core transition Shah identifies.
Which is?
We are no longer operating primarily in a product economy. We have transitioned fully into a perception economy.
Wow, okay, that is a powerful distinction. A perception economy. That suggests the real battle isn't about, incremental performance superiority. It's not my product is 2% faster than yours.
Not at all. It's a fight for cognitive clarity. It's a battle for real estate, but the real estate is inside the customer's head.
And the implications for how you run a company, how you allocate resources are Massive.
Profound. The market no longer inherently rewards sheer speed or raw iteration velocity on its own. If you ship 50 features in a month, but nobody understands what problem those features collectively solve for them, you haven't created value.
You've just created higher maintenance costs.
You've just created noise. That's it. So markets now reward coherence, clarity, and meaning. That's the new currency.
I can almost hear a founder listening to this right now and pushing back, though. They'd be saying, wait a minute. If my product has better retention, if it's faster, if it has a lower bug rate, how can communication possibly trump pure engineering excellence?
And that's a completely fair challenge. It's the old way of thinking. But Shah's analysis counters that engineering excellence only matters after the customer has already made the choice to engage with you.
So it's a prerequisite, not the differentiator.
Exactly. If you build a flawless application, but a potential user lands on your site and can't immediately articulate its value, or worse, they struggle to categorize it against the other 10 options they have open in their browser tabs. Your app starves. It dies right there in the current market environment.
So the market demands understanding first, feature second. Clarity is the gatekeeper.
Clarity is the gatekeeper to engagement. Without it, the gate never opens.
And this brings us to what Shah highlights as the cruel paradox of velocity in today's saturated markets. You can genuinely be improving your product every single week. You can be shipping feature updates faster than all your competitors. And yet, you can remain effectively invisible.
Your velocity is just creating noise, not market gravity. It's not pulling people in.
It's like shouting louder in a room where everyone is already screaming.
That's a perfect analogy. Imagine you have the best food truck in a stadium with 10,000 other food trucks. They're all selling slightly different but high-quality sandwiches. The mere fact of having a slightly better sandwich, it doesn't mean you get noticed.
Not at all.
The market is so saturated that the signal-to-noise ratio has completely evaporated. Everyone is shouting about how great their product is, and as a result, nobody is listening.
And when every product reaches this baseline level of interchangeability, which Shah says is the natural, inevitable outcome of democratized tooling, the competitive advantage shifts completely.
It shifts away from the mechanics of building.
And toward what he calls the team that can describe their difference in a way customers feel instantly. That's the key word, right? Feel.
It's all about feeling, this ability to articulate difference, to craft that feeling. That's where the slowdown now lives. It is a marketing problem, not a deployment problem.
And that inability to articulate the difference, it leads directly to this critical consequence that Shah just hammers home.
Which is the sheer cost of friction.
Yes. He says the cost of confusion has never been higher. And we're not talking about a small inconvenience here, are we?
No, we're talking about a major economic barrier, a conversion killer. Customers are just not willing to dedicate their finite mental energy to figuring out your value proposition in a world where an alternative is literally one click away.
Let's spend a moment on that. He calls it the next tab mentality.
It's an instantaneous and, as you said, ruthless calculus. If a user lands on your homepage and within, say, 3 to 5 seconds, they have to think too hard to answer the question, what do you do and why should I care?
Yeah.
You've already lost the game.
It's over.
It's over. Confusion equals risk in the user's mind. And risk means abandonment. Click. They're gone.
And that decision to abandon, it's not even a logical one, is it?
Not at all. It's emotional. They aren't sitting there thinking, this product is technically inferior based on its feature set. They're feeling, ugh, I don't have the cognitive space for this right now. This feels like work.
This is confusing.
This is confusing. The bottleneck is literally the time it takes for your marketing, your language, your design, your positioning to remove that cognitive friction. If you fail at that first hurdle, your entire engineering team's brilliant work for the past year becomes completely and utterly irrelevant.
Wow. Okay, that sets the stage perfectly. So creation is abundant, confusion is expensive. The next step then has to be drilling down into the mechanics of this shift. How does this actually work?
Absolutely. Let's deepen the dive into this perception shift, and I think we should focus intensely on what Shah argues is the real constraint here. He says it is translation, not creation.
Translation, not creation.
Yeah.
Okay.
And this distinction is absolutely fundamental because if you accept it, it changes how a founder should staff their company, how they should fund it, how they prioritize everything.
Because most founders are still operating under the old model.
They're still operating under the assumption that their primary constraint is product output. We need to ship more features, when in reality, the constraint is the ability to communicate that output to a saturated, overwhelmed, and distracted audience.
So it sounds like it's a linguistic issue at its very heart. The problem is that the builder and the buyer are speaking fundamentally different languages about the exact same object.
They're speaking entirely different internal dialects. It's a complete communication breakdown inside the company. The engineers, the product managers, the internal stakeholders, they speak in release
Yeah,
notes.
perfect.
They're focused on the mechanics, the new APIs, the technical throughput, the dependencies, the check marks on the roadmap. They measure success by functionality shipped. It's all about the how of the product.
But the sources are so clear that customers don't live in that world at all.
Not even close. Customers think in stories. They think in terms of narratives about their own immediate pain points, their existing workflows, and the hero, your product, that they need to come in and solve it.
They're the protagonists of their own story.
Always. And they measure success by emotional resonance, by the speed of their own transformation, and by the narrative payoff. They only care about the why and the what's next for me.
So you have this widening gap, this chasm. Engineering produces functionality, a set of features that do things.
But marketing's job is to produce meaning, a framework that explains why those features matter right now to this specific person. The functionality might be brilliant, it might even be world-class, but if that value isn't clearly framed, if it just sits there in that linguistic chasm, what happens?
The perceived risk for the customer goes up immediately.
Instantly. And that perceived risk, as we said, is the silent killer in today's market.
So when risk feels high meaning, I might waste my time trying to learn this, or I might integrate this and it might not work the way they promised, or even just, I don't get it, users retreat.
They retreat to what they know, to what feels safe. And this is what causes even brilliant products to fail. It's not a failure of the code base, it's a failure of translation. Marketing, therefore, its real job in this new economy is to reduce that perceived risk.
I love that framing. The job of marketing is risk reduction.
And Shah takes this a step further. He argues that narrative isn't just, some decorative thing you slap on at the end. It's not the icing on the cake. It is infrastructure.
Okay, that's a powerful idea. Let's really explore that infrastructure metaphor. What does that mean in practice?
Well, think about complex systems in the real world. What is infrastructure? It's the foundational element that allows value transfer to occur. It's the roads, the bridges, the power grid.
So a state-of-the-art logistics hub, your product, is completely useless if the roads leading to it, your narrative, are incomplete or clogged or just non-existent.
That's it, exactly. Narrative is the essential infrastructure that connects the brilliant product, the goods, to the waiting customer, the demand. If you don't invest in building that connection, the product remains isolated and worthless, no matter how powerful it is.
The sources use another powerful metaphor here. It says a strong story functions like gravity. I want to unpack that because it beautifully encapsulates the system-level benefits of having this coherence. How does narrative gravity actually organize a business?
It acts as an organizational and directional force in multiple critical ways. So first, and maybe most obviously, it aligns all your channels.
Okay.
If you have a powerful core narrative, let's say, we're the security tool built only for remote teams working in Asia, that narrative has to be obsessively consistent across every single channel. It ensures that the message on a LinkedIn ad, the website copy, the FAQ page, and the sales decks are all pulling in the exact same coherent direction.
Which you can contrast with the typical approach, right? Where the ad copy from the performance marketing team is promising speed, the website copy written by someone else emphasizes low cost, and then the sales team is in a demo pitching deep integration capabilities.
And those three messages are actively competing for the customer's limited cognitive attention. They're undermining each other.
So that's the first function, aligning channels.
Mm-hmm.
What's the second?
The second function of narrative gravity is that it compounds your effort. When every marketing dollar you spend reinforces the same core message, the effect becomes multiplicative. You don't just get 1 + 1 = 2, you get 1 + 1 = 5.
Because the market starts to do the work for you.
Exactly. This is what reduces your customer acquisition cost, your CAC, over time, because the market begins to recognize and categorize you instantly without you having to pay for that impression every single time.
And third, it drastically reduces friction.
It eliminates confusion. When the narrative is crystal clear, the user doesn't have to pause and process. They instantly know, this is for me. Or just as importantly, this is not for me.
That self-selection is so critical. You're not wasting cycles on the wrong people.
And that leads to the final and maybe the most important benefit. A powerful narrative builds emotional contracts.
Emotional contracts. Differentiate that from a transactional one.
A transactional contract is simple. I pay you $10, you give me a software subscription. An emotional contract is, I trust you because you understand my specific problem better than anyone else in the world.
And that trust.
That trust leads to deeper loyalty, much higher resilience during, say, price hikes, and most importantly, enthusiastic referrals. People don't refer products, they refer stories they believe in.
And the absence of this gravity is what we see in so many struggling mid-stage companies. They lack coherence, so their marketing becomes fragmented.
It's chaos. You have the performance marketing team pulling one way with a message focused on some low-cost tactic. The content team is off pushing a thought leadership message on broad industry trends. And then sales is in a meeting telling a completely different story about personalized service.
That's internal competition disguised as marketing.
And it's incredibly destructive. You're just pouring fuel on a chaotic system. Shah notes that the product might be evolving weekly, showing a high technical velocity. But if the story never fully crystallizes, or worse, if it constantly shifts, your performance will suddenly just fall off a cliff.
Why?
Because the market can no longer categorize you reliably. The perception gap grows quietly, day by day, undermining years of incredible engineering work.
So this means the true competitive battlefield. It isn't in those feature comparison charts that engineers love to build and obsess over.
Not at all. Shah is emphatic about this. Competition occurs in the invisible terrain of perception, the specific architecture of the customer's mind.
It's a silent battle.
It's a silent, constant battle over framing, over what you might call cognitive control. And your marketing must proactively seek to answer and ultimately control 3 essential questions in the customer's head.
And if you don't control them,
if you don't, the customer defaults to old, comfortable answers that benefit your established competitors. You lose before the game even starts.
okay, let's break down that first essential question. Who defines what the problem is?
This is so critical. If you let the customer define the problem using their old mental models, the way they currently describe their pain, they will naturally seek old solutions or solutions that look familiar to them.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Let's say you've built a revolutionary new data visualization tool, but your customer only defines their problem as, ugh, I need a better spreadsheet. What are they going to look for?
Tools that look and feel like better spreadsheets.
Exactly. You lose. Your job is to redefine the problem itself. You have to convince them that their problem isn't the data display, it's the lack of instant, actionable foresight. You have to elevate the problem.
And that redefinition requires a strategic narrative that directly challenges the status quo. Okay, the second question is tied to emotional urgency. How urgent does it feel?
So many products solve a real problem, but their narrative completely fails to impart any urgency. It just remains a nice to have.
The dreaded nice to have.
A clear, resonant narrative takes a theoretical pain point and makes it feel like an immediate burning necessity. And it often does that by connecting it to a massive potential loss or a massive potential gain.
So you move the problem from, say, we should probably clean up our customer data at some point, to
If we don't fix this data cleanliness issue by the end of next quarter, we are going to lose 15% of our highest value accounts due to a major compliance risk. That narrative linkage is what converts mild interest into immediate necessity.
and the final, ultimate question that marketing has to control.
Which solution feels inevitable?
Inevitable, that's a strong word.
In a world of infinite choice, inevitability is the highest possible positioning victory you can achieve. If a customer is presented with 5 competing products and your marketing has successfully positioned you as the only logical, the only obvious, or the only future-proof choice, the one that everyone serious is eventually going to adopt.
You've won the perception battle.
You've won. Your competitors are now being judged against the inevitability that you've established in the market's mind.
And this is where strategic language becomes the ultimate form of leverage. Shah is very specific that words are not just surface-level tactics.
No, they are tools. Tools that shape expectation, interpretation, and desire before the product even gets used. The ultimate goal is to, and I love this phrase, pre-frame reality itself.
Pre-framing reality, what does that mean?
It means controlling the mental model the customer uses to evaluate your product and all your competitors. By the time the customer gets to your demo or the sign-up page, they are not arriving as an objective judge.
They're arriving as someone who has already rehearsed the decision in their mind based on the narrative you implanted.
Exactly. They are not judging the product objectively anymore. They are simply validating the story you already told them.
So companies that master this, They move beyond launching products. They launch mental models.
And these mental models are incredibly sticky. Once you've convinced a market that your product category is defined by, say, speed and not feature count, then every competitor who comes along and pitches their long feature list is already operating under your framework. And they're losing.
Because they're answering the wrong question.
They're answering the question you taught the market to stop asking, controlling how the customer constructs the meaning of what they see. That is the definition of a perception economy win, meaning once you set it, becomes the frame through which every future action and judgment is filtered.
So if your product is framed as the inevitable next step, every feature release you ship is seen as proof of your superior vision.
But if it's framed as just another tool, every feature release is seen as just more noise. It's an incredibly high-leverage strategic move.
Okay, we've firmly established the necessity of narrative. Now let's pivot to the root cause of all this. The AI accelerator. This whole diagnosis, the marketing is the bottleneck. It's entirely driven by the rapid, destabilizing influence of technology itself.
That's right. We need to look closely at how AI didn't just change the market. It fundamentally intensified the problems of saturation and invisibility.
The sources outline a very distinct first wave of AI impact that created this abundance problem. You keep talking about the outcomes, the market flood, but let's detail the technical mechanism behind it.
So AI turns software creation from, as we quoted before, a gated engineering discipline into a near-democratized superpower.
I think we need to get very concrete here for anyone listening. How exactly did AI shatter that old technical scarcity? What specific tasks did LLMs and intelligent design platforms take off the plate of a founder?
Historically, the biggest barrier to entry was the sheer cost and time of complex, high-quality engineering work. Just think about a typical SaaS MVP. You needed a front-end framework, a robust back-end architecture, a secure database setup, all your testing infrastructure, reliable deployment pipelines.
Each one of those components required specialized, very expensive talent and a significant investment of time.
And that friction, that difficulty, it kept the market relatively clean. Only the well-capitalized teams or the truly exceptional engineering teams could even get to a viable product.
But now,
thanks to tools like advanced code generation models, intelligent co-pilots in your IDE, infrastructure as code generators, the whole story changes. An engineer can literally prompt an LLM to generate the boilerplate code for an entire microservice complete with basic authentication and database connection logic in minutes.
not months, minutes.
Automated testing frameworks can be scaffolded instantly. Security best practices, which used to be a massive headache and required specialists, can now be implemented via AI-driven compliance checks.
So the time required to go from a pure idea to a functional MVP has collapsed. From months or quarters down to, in some cases, hours or days, even for a solo founder.
The cost of that initial labor is substituted by the cost of the prompt and the compute time. And this creates a radical, almost violent acceleration of output. We are seeing founders, even those with just a clear vision and minimal capital spin up functional MVPs in a weekend.
Full-stack apps that can handle real user loads built in days. Iterative releases happening weekly.
It means creation is no longer the rare skill. It's now the default accessible condition for almost everyone.
And the inevitable result of that explosive velocity is market saturation across every conceivable niche. We've seen this absolute mushrooming of micro-sauce applications, hyper-niche tools, rapid experiments, just flooding every digital storefront, every app store, every industry vertical.
It is, without a doubt, the most creative and productive startup era in human history.
And yet it leads to the ultimate paradox.
The most creative era is also the most invisible era.
Abundance creates invisibility. When the market is saturated and every single competitor can produce a product that is, by all previous metrics, good enough,
Meaning functional, secure, performant.
then nothing stands out. Differentiation becomes marginal because everyone is starting from a similar, very high-quality AI-assisted baseline. Products just vanish into the relentless scroll of infinite options.
And think about the diminishing returns on pure innovation. You can invest heavily to make your product, say, 10% faster. But if your competitors can use AI to instantly achieve a 9% speed improvement for practically free, that innovation doesn't buy you any real market visibility or share.
Your quality metric doesn't move the needle on its own.
because the customer now expects quality as a baseline condition. It's table stakes.
And Shah emphasizes that this isn't a failure of engineering or innovation. He's very clear on this. It's a failure of connection. The source material provides this really powerful analogy of the startup ecosystem as a global border jam.
It's such an insightful way to visualize the problem. Imagine you have these highly valuable trucks. That's your perfectly coded, brilliant product, and they're filled with premium goods. The demand exists out there. People genuinely need those goods.
But the path between the product and the demand, the marketing, the clarity, the narrative structure is clogged. It's a traffic jam of bureaucracy and bottlenecks.
It's a fundamental inability to transit value efficiently. The goods are valuable, but they're stuck in transit, basically rotting in the queue.
And this border jam, it translates into some very frustrating analytics for founders. High bounce rates, poor conversion, stalled user growth.
Founders look at their dashboards and they see this confusing picture. They see good retention among the small group of users they do manage to acquire, which tells them the product is good. But they see zero overall awareness growth.
And an excellent app, but no audience traction.
And this happens because founders are still prioritizing speaking in code and release notes, while the customer's mind is only processing narrative and category frameworks. The marketing bridge is broken, or at least it's massively underpowered relative to the sheer volume of goods being produced.
So innovation is happening at light speed, but market impact is moving at a snail's pace.
That's the jam.
Okay, so that was the first wave of AI democratizing, building, and causing this saturation. Now let's look forward to what Shah calls the second wave. This is AI supercharging visibility.
This is the cruel twist in the story.
It is. If AI made it easier to build, its next evolution is to make it easier and faster to be seen. And this intensification makes that marketing bottleneck exponentially tighter.
It's a massive accelerant on an already difficult problem. Just as code generation leveled the playing field for developer productivity, AI is now transforming marketing into an intelligent, adaptive, and hyper-efficient system.
We're moving away from marketing as guesswork.
Completely. The old world of slow A/B testing, long iteration cycles, that's being replaced. We're moving toward marketing as real-time personalized orchestration.
I need some concrete examples of this second wave capability. What advanced powers are now available to a founder in this perception game?
Okay, think about personalized storytelling at scale. Today, a marketing team might manually segment their users into, say, 5 or 10 personas.
Right, based on job title or company size?
Exactly. Tomorrow, an AI marketing infrastructure will be able to perform real-time audience segmentation into hundreds of micro-personas based on implicit behavioral signals, not just crude demographics.
Wow.
It can then generate emotionally adaptive messaging that customizes the tone, the examples used, and the urgency level for each of those microsegments simultaneously.
So if I'm a risk-averse CFO visiting the site, the AI serves me messaging focused on compliance and stability. But if I'm a rapid growth founder, it serves me messaging focused on velocity and market capture, all from the exact same product core.
Precisely. And we're also talking about predictive content optimization. The AI doesn't just measure which ad is performing better after the fact. It predicts which elements of the ad, the colors, the facial expressions in the image, the specific word choices, will resonate most powerfully with a specific user based on their historical psychological profile.
And it optimizes the creative in real time.
In real time, marketing is shifting from being a creative discipline that relies on intuition to being an engineering discipline that relies on data and orchestration.
Wow. So the battle for mental real estate becomes incredibly fast and incredibly dense. The market saturation caused by the first wave, combined with this extreme velocity and personalization of messaging from the second wave, it makes the need for a crystal clear, resonant narrative completely non-negotiable.
It has to be. If you don't have a coherent narrative to begin with, the AI orchestration will simply amplify your existing incoherence at scale. It will just help you drain your budget faster and more efficiently.
Which is a nightmare scenario.
This double acceleration easy building plus hyper-efficient targeting, it forces a change in the fundamental structural model of a startup. The old model, which has been in place for decades, was simple. Product, launch, hope.
And that model is now obsolete.
Hope is not a strategy in the age of abundance. It's a recipe for bankruptcy.
So Shaw's sources prescribe a new model, the new startup trinity.
Product, narrative, momentum. Narrative is strategically placed as the essential engine between your innovation and any market impact. It's the required step function. You cannot get from product to momentum without it.
The mandate, then, for founders in this AI era is crystal clear.
You must build boldly, of course, utilizing the power of AI to create superior products. But you must also market deliberately, leveraging AI for that hyper-efficiency we talked about. And most importantly, you must narrate strategically, crafting a story that can actually cut through all that noise.
And this leads us to the ultimate paradox of this whole thing, doesn't it?
It does. The most advanced technological systems we've ever created, AI, machine learning, automation, are ultimately rewarding the most human, non-automatable skill of all.
The ability to make people care.
The question is no longer, can you build it quickly and cheaply? The new question is, can the world see it, understand it, and most importantly, believe in it? The winners will be the ones who can make people care, because caring is the only differentiator that cannot be instantly cloned by an LLM.
Okay, we have firmly established the why. Marketing is the bottleneck because creation is too easy and confusion is too expensive. Now we have to transition into the actionable how. Let's move into the practical application and drill down into Hiten Shah's playbook for achieving this marketing coherence.
Yeah, this is where it gets really tactical. And the beauty of Shah's approach is that it rejects all the superficial stuff. He doesn't start with channels or, the latest growth hacks. He starts with foundational mindset shifts.
And we begin with what he calls Principle 1, maniacal customer obsession. Shah is ruthless about this point.
He is. He argues that effective marketing has to begin and end with the customer, not with what he calls the marketing sh.t list.
The marketing shit list, I love that. What does he mean by that?
It's the random, disconnected list of tactics that founders think they're supposed to do. We need to do some SEO. Let's post on TikTok. We should launch a webinar. Let's buy some display ads. All of it done in a vacuum, completely disconnected from the user's actual journey and their reality.
So maniacal customer obsession is the antidote to that.
It's moving past basic demographic data and those surface-level customer interviews that everyone does. It requires absolute immersion into the customer's world.
So what does that look like in practice?
It means knowing precisely where your target customers spend their finite attention. What forums do they actually read? What Slack or Discord channels do they inhabit? Which 3 experts in their field do they implicitly trust and listen to?
It also means delving deeply into their language. Not just what they say, but how they say it. Understanding their specific fears, their goals, and most crucially, tracking how they make decisions, not just what they end up clicking on. We're looking for the emotional trigger points.
Exactly. If you're selling a security product, for example, is the buyer more worried about being fired for a breach? Or are they more worried about failing a compliance audit? Those are 2 very different fears.
And they require drastically different narratives to address them.
Maniacal customer obsession is about turning marketing from what feels like improvisation into a form of engineering. You are meticulously studying the customer's decision matrix as if your company's survival depended on it.
Because according to Shah's entire thesis, it absolutely does.
It does, and this intense focus on a specific customer profile leads directly into Principle 2, the power of niching down.
Shah has this brilliant counterintuitive frame for this. He says, riches live where fear lives.
It's so good because the instinct of most founders is to go broad. They want to capture the widest possible audience. Our product is for everyone.
But broad positioning inherently weakens your resonance, doesn't it?
It kills it. You're trying to be everything to everyone, which means you end up becoming nothing specific to anyone. But narrow positioning, it sharpens resonance because you're focused on solving an acute, scary, high-stakes problem for a very specific, well-defined profile.
Let's use the 8 Sleep example that's in the sources. It's a perfect illustration of this. They could have just targeted sleep enthusiasts, which is a massive, vague, and highly competitive consumer market.
Right, a terrible category to try and win. Instead, they obsessed over a specific customer archetype. Perhaps it's the high-performing professional athlete, or the time-compressed executive, or the person with chronic sleep issues where every single minute of REM sleep is crucial to their performance the next day.
These are people with precise, high-stakes lifestyle pain points. They have a fear.
They have a fear. And that extreme clarity, that narrow niche, it reoriented every single aspect of their marketing and their product experience. The website messaging wasn't just sleep better.
No, it was optimize your recovery.
Optimize your recovery.
Yeah.
The ad creative showed intense performance, not just, comfortable pajamas. The entire brand narrative shifted to optimization and biological engineering.
So the result is precision, not limitation. You actually gain incredible market gravity by going narrow. because that target audience feels like the product was built exclusively for them.
And think about the economics of it. If your product is for everyone, your marketing cost is going to be enormous because you have to spend constantly just to grab their attention. But if your product is for, say, the hyper-stressed CTO of a remote fintech startup, your message cuts right through the noise because it resonates with their specific fear immediately.
Okay, that leads us to principle 3, competitive perception. Shah warns that founders are almost always looking at their competitors the wrong way.
They are. They get obsessed with feature lists, they scroll through their competitor's website, make a big spreadsheet, and then their goal is to just build one more feature than the other guy.
That's an engineering mindset, not a perception mindset.
Exactly. Competitive analysis in the perception economy is about studying what customers say and feel about your competitors, not just what they build.
So where do you find that?
You have to dig deep into the places where customers vent their frustrations or express genuine, unprompted delight. We're talking about trawling unfiltered forums like Reddit, analyzing the specific emotional gaps people voice in App Store reviews, studying the recurring themes in support tickets or cancellation reasons.
Because these comments, they reveal the unmet expectations. They show you the narrative gaps that your marketing can exploit for powerful positioning opportunities.
The customer isn't complaining that the code has a bug. They're complaining about the experience, the confusion, or the feeling of being misunderstood by the product.
So differentiation then is not about building a superior general product.
It's about being superior for a specific perception. You might not have the most features or the cheapest price, but if your product is perceived as the simplest, most elegant solution for X niche, you win that specific mental category. You own that piece of mental territory.
And this naturally flows into principle 4, reinforcing the centrality of product market fit, or PMF. Shah has a very specific view on this. He sees it not as some vague entrepreneurial vibe, but as measurable, articulate resonance.
And he issues a very serious warning here, especially in the context of AI acceleration. He says, scaling without PMF is like pouring fuel on fog.
Pouring fuel on fog.
Wow. All those powerful AI-accelerated marketing tactics we talked about in the second wave, they are completely irrelevant. In fact, they're dangerous without established PMF. If you accelerate a message that nobody actually wants to hear, you simply burn cash faster.
And you create a very dangerous scenario of vanity metrics. High impressions, maybe a lot of clicks, but zero durable revenue.
Shah's repeated overriding principle here is that clarity beats speed. Your real advantage in a chaotic market isn't moving faster than your competitor. It's understanding reality, your customer's reality, and your product's role within it better than anyone else. PMF is the gravity you need before you can responsibly attempt to build momentum.
So once you have that clarity, you can start building a narrative. Which brings us to principle 5, the Don Draper principle of narrative differentiation.
I love this one. This principle is all about how you transform a mundane, easily copyable process into a powerful, symbolic, and proprietary advantage.
The famous historical analogy here is the Lucky Strike cigarette campaign from the 1950s. At the time, all cigarettes were basically the same. They were a commodity.
A total commodity. Yet the ad campaign famously reframed their product around this one simple idea. Their tobacco was toasted.
And toasted wasn't even a unique feature, was it?
Not at all. Toasting was just a standard part of the curing process for virtually all tobacco. It was a mechanical reality. But by naming it, highlighting it, and owning the narrative around it, they transformed a table stake into this powerful, symbolic advantage that suggested higher quality and better taste.
They created a perception moat where no technical moat existed.
And Shah argues that in today's saturated SaaS markets where features are easily cloned and AI makes creation trivial, differentiation must often be narrative, not numerical. You have to manufacture a psychological identity for your customers to belong to.
So what are some modern SaaS examples of this?
Well, look at ConvertKit. They could have just positioned themselves as email marketing software, a huge, generic, bloody category.
That's sad.
They deliberately anchored themselves to creators. To bloggers, YouTubers, online educators, not generic small businesses. They chose a tribe. And that single choice dictated everything. Their features, their UI, their pricing, and their entire brand. They sell belonging and empowerment to that specific group.
Similarly, Beehive entered a crowded market and emphasized a newsletter-first identity. They focused on simplicity and monetization tools for a specific type of writer.
They created a narrative that says, we are the modern infrastructure for the written independent media. And that's a story of destiny and momentum, not just a list of features.
The profound takeaway here, then, is that you can copy tactics. You can copy a competitor's pricing. You can clone their website layout.
With AI, you can even clone their code base incredibly quickly.
But you cannot easily copy positioning.
Because positioning is decided by strategy. And strategy dictates who your product is for. Tactics just follow the strategy.
That strategic depth has to come from a meticulous understanding of user behavior and customer friction, which leads us to Principle 6, attempt metrics and the psychology of friction.
This is a direct insight that comes from Shah's pioneering work with Crazy Egg, the behavioral analytics company.
Right, so traditional analytics like Google Analytics, they focus on what he calls destination metrics.
What users accomplished? Did they convert? Did they complete the form? These are the outcomes. But Shah says the real gold is in what they attempt, the journey itself.
And what are we talking about there? Specific behavioral signals.
Very specific granular signals, hesitations, repeated misclicks on an element that isn't even clickable, aggressive hover patterns over a certain word, back and forth scrolling, and the exact scroll pauses that occur right before a user gives up and bounces.
So attempt metrics are like the physiological data of the customer's confusion. They reveal friction.
A heat map doesn't just show you where people click. It shows you where confidence forms, where doubt creeps in, and where your story literally loses its momentum because the customer is struggling to translate your value proposition.
This is behavioral engineering.
It is. Shah's fundamental observation is that visitors behave emotionally, not logically. So your pages should be viewed as conversations, not as static billboards.
Can you give a practical example?
Sure. Let's say a paragraph on your landing page is a bit confusing, or it uses some internal jargon. The user might pause their scroll there. Then they might jump back up to reread the headline, maybe scroll back down to the confusing part, and then hesitate for a second before scrolling all the way back to the top. Lost.
That sequence of actions, the hesitation, the rereading, the back and forth, that's a measurable attempt metric.
And it's signaling a cognitive stall. The writer of that page thinks they wrote a clear paragraph. The heat map proves the story is stalling at that exact point. Writers think in paragraphs. Readers think in moments of clarity or confusion.
So mastering attempt metrics means you stop optimizing for just the conversion button at the end of the page.
And you start optimizing for the flow of confidence throughout the entire journey. You're looking for those invisible snags in your narrative infrastructure and removing them one by one until the user's journey feels completely smooth and inevitable.
And this level of behavioral detail is non-negotiable in a perception economy.
Because users are no longer willing to tolerate any friction at all.
Now we can synthesize these principles into a larger operational philosophy. This is Principle 7, marketing as a value multiplier, not a megaphone.
This reframes the entire function of the marketing department inside a company. For Shah, marketing is a lens that clarifies existing value. It is not a volume knob, a megaphone that just amplifies incoherence.
And when marketing is treated like a megaphone, it just makes the underlying chaos and confusion louder.
And it accelerates the cash burn we talked about earlier. Think of it this way. If your product has 5 units of real value, effective marketing's job is to clarify that value, ensuring the customer perceives all 5 of those units clearly.
But if your product only have 1 unit of real value, marketing can't magically multiply it to 5.
It's purely an illumination mechanism. It reveals what's already there. In the AI age, where you can build products in weeks and launch competitors in days, the real moat isn't the feature list anymore. It's that profound market understanding, that deep connection revealed by maniacal customer obsession. Marketing is the only reliable way to achieve and broadcast that understanding into the customer's mind.
And finally, we arrive at the highest level of strategic implementation. Principle 8, cognitive alignment.
This is where it all comes together.
Marketing, at its most strategic, is not about generating leads. It becomes the architecture of the customer's entire decision-making process.
It's the ultimate synthesis of all the previous principles we've discussed. It's about actively shaping cognitive reality. It shapes how the customer perceives their own problems, moving them from a general pain to an acute, urgent crisis. That's Principle 2.
It shapes which solutions feel inevitable, moving your product into that safe, obvious category. That's Principle 3.
And it dictates the very framework by which all your features are judged. That's Principle 5, the Don Draper principle.
So the ultimate demand of this new playbook, it's to force a systemic shift within the entire company.
Everyone has to be on board. You have to start treating language and narrative as part of your core product infrastructure. You have to invest in clarity before you invest in channels. You have to build proprietary mental models for your audience.
And you have to train every single team member, from sales development to the engineers themselves, to think like a translator.
Constantly bridging that gap between brilliant functionality and articulated meaning. Because if the entire company is not aligned around that single coherent narrative, the marketing bottleneck will tighten around the business and choke it, regardless of how much AI power you try to leverage.
We've thoroughly analyzed the cause, the effect, and the practical playbook. So now, let's zoom all the way out and synthesize the meta shift this represents for the modern economy.
Yeah, this brings us back to the ultimate quiet truth that underpins all of Shah's findings.
We established the initial premise, but I think it really bears repeating as the final conclusion.
Marketing didn't become the bottleneck because marketing suddenly became a more complex discipline, although, in many ways it has. Marketing became the bottleneck because everything else, the mechanics of building, iterating, and deploying, became exponentially easier and cheaper.
The technical barriers to creation just collapsed. And that flooded the market, shifting the entire competitive landscape toward communication and perception.
The new arms race is not for a 10x better product. It is for a 10x better understanding of the customer and a 10x clearer articulation of that value.
And this better understanding translates directly into the ability to define identity and destiny for the customer. Shah emphasizes this concept of narrative monopolists.
These are companies whose power is not derived from their specific feature set or their technical superiority alone. It comes from their story gravity, the sheer coherence of their central narrative.
I think we should dedicate some significant time to breaking down the specific symbolic advantages cited in the source material, because this is where this meta shift becomes undeniable. These companies don't just sell you a product, they control the mental models. And because they do that, they set the frame for all future judgment in their category.
Let's start with the quintessential example, Apple.
Of course.
Apple is the perfect narrative monopolist. They don't primarily sell computers or phones. What do they sell?
They sell identity. Owning an Apple product is a non-verbal statement about who you are. You're creative, you're a meticulous designer, you're a person who values seamlessness, and you're someone who is willing to pay a premium for that simplicity and elegance.
The product is the badge of belonging to that particular tribe.
And that narrative is incredibly sticky, isn't it?
Yeah.
When Apple releases a new iPhone with what might be a pretty minor upgrade, the customer doesn't evaluate it based on raw technical specifications against a cheaper Android phone.
No, they evaluate it based on whether it reinforces the identity they already own. If the customer's core belief is Apple equals quality, then minor flaws are often dismissed as just an anomaly, and new features are celebrated as genius because the frame is already set. The story is already in their head.
Okay, let's look at another one. Tesla.
Tesla does not sell cars.
No, they sell destiny.
Their narrative is about participation in an inevitable future. A future defined by sustainable energy and radical autonomy. When you buy a Tesla, you are buying into a specific, technologically utopian vision of tomorrow. You are signing up for the momentum of that destiny.
And this allows them to overcome some significant gaps in execution or production quality that would absolutely crush a traditional auto manufacturer.
It would kill them. Why can Tesla get away with it?
Because the customer accepts the premise that they are participating in a necessary evolving destiny. They're willing to forgive the current flaws because they are betting on the future narrative.
So their positioning isn't against Ford or GM.
Their positioning is against the entire status quo of energy consumption. It's a much bigger story.
Next, consider Nike.
Nike is selling transcendence. Their products, the shoes, the apparel, the gear, those are just the mechanisms for achieving peak human potential.
Their entire advertising philosophy focuses on struggle, effort, and overcoming seemingly impossible obstacles. The slogan, "Just do it," is a narrative of immediate action and personal victory. They sell the feeling of victory, not the thread count of the fabric. The emotional contract is that by using their product, you are aligning yourself with the spirit of excellence and the capacity to transcend your physical limits.
Which is why their sponsored athletes are not just models.
They are narrative vehicles for transcendence. They embody the story.
And finally, let's focus on the most relevant example in the current environment, OpenAI.
They are selling cognitive empowerment. Their narrative frames their tools, ChatGPT, DALL-E, and all the future models, not as software, but as a fundamental epochal shift in human capability.
They're selling a superpower, an extension of the human mind, a necessary tool for the future of work.
And by framing their tools as an extension of your own capability, they encourage users to adopt a mindset of continuous integration and reliance. They are positioning the user as a superhuman, not just a software user.
And that is a brilliant move in cognitive alignment. It shapes expectations and it sets the competitive standard for everyone else trying to enter that space.
All of these companies are masters of meaning architecture. They shape how the customer constructs the meaning of what they see and experience. And that control of meaning is the ultimate non-technical moat.
So to summarize, the economy has shifted fundamentally. We're moving from an era where sheer effort was rewarded, where the difficulty of building something complex was valuable in itself, to an era where coherence is rewarded.
The ability to build is still necessary, of course, but it's now table stakes. The ability to articulate value clearly is what unlocks market gravity.
The new measure of competitive advantage, according to Shah's analysis, is not a bigger marketing budget or a smarter algorithm.
It is a deeper, truer connection between what you build and who needs it. And that connection is built piece by piece through narrative infrastructure.
Which brings us back to the final mandate for you, the listener, the learner. In this era of rapid, abundant building, the product you create is only half the battle. The other half is ensuring that the world can see it, can understand it.
And can believe in the specific destiny you are selling. That ability to generate belief is what the new bottleneck demands from all of us.
This has been an absolutely essential and incredibly detailed deep dive into why clarity and narrative have become the ultimate competitive advantage in this AI-accelerated economy. We've covered the catastrophic bottleneck shift, the absolute necessity of narrative infrastructure, and Hiten Shah's non-negotiable playbook of customer obsession and cognitive alignment.
It's just such a compelling argument because it forces us to recognize that technology, which we often view as cold and logical, ultimately amplifies the value of the most fundamentally human skills: empathy, deep understanding, and storytelling.
You have to understand people better than you understand your own code.
That's the takeaway.
And on that note, let's end with a provocative final thought for you to chew on this week, building on this idea that meaning is the new moat.
So we've discussed how the most powerful companies sell identity, destiny, and transcendence. If that is the high bar of the perception economy, then I want you to think about your own daily life, your industry, or even the essential everyday products and services you use regularly.
Yeah.
What fundamental product or service currently has the weakest narrative?
Mm-hmm.
It's likely a product that everyone uses, but nobody feels any passion about. Or a commodity whose story is just stuck in mechanics, not in meaning. Could simply reframing the story, giving it a clear destiny, giving it a resonant identity, or selling the transcendence it enables, unlock massive hidden demand. The future belongs to those who master the art of making the ordinary feel inevitable.
Find that weak narrative, give it gravity, and you might just have the next narrative monopolist on your hands. We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.